Imagine waking up every morning to this: decayed and deteriorating buildings littering your neighborhood. Red X structures, which alert firefighters to potential dangers, are next to you, across from you, surrounding you. For people living in Albany's West Hill neighborhood, they don't have to imagine these eyesores. This is their reality.
Some people said that they are frustrated, even embarrassed to have to live here in the West Hill area, but they say they can't afford anywhere else. One man says that he gets up every morning to sweep in front of his apartment, but he says it doesn't change the look of the neighborhood. And as much as people came up to me and wanted to talk to me and complained, no one wanted to go on camera with me. This apparent apathy, you might be surprised to learn, has a direct result to the conditions here.
In the city of Albany, there are 1,044 vacant buildings. 300 are Red X structures.
There are vacant buildings in every neighborhood in the city of Albany. There's not a single ward in the city that doesn't have vacant buildings.
Then West Hill is a vacant building graveyard. Why hasn't something been done about the problem? The mayor blames the previous administration.
I can only do what I can do, right? I became mayor. I recognize that there's nobody here whose job it is to do this, and we don't have the money to do it.
Last year, the city found money and launched a $1 million program offering $50,000 grants to qualified homeowners and developers to rehabilitate vacant buildings.
It's going well.
Some might disagree. Only 12 individuals have purchased vacant buildings, given those $50,000 grants. Most of those are outsiders. Only 4 people living in the community got grants.
We want to make sure that these projects are being taken on by individuals who really understand what it takes.
Some residents believe this is really gentrification, encouragement to those outside the community to come in, build up, and price those living there out.
We're a long, long way from gentrification. Our preference is to provide this funding for residents.
And those living in the apartments who may want to one day become homeowners?
That is part of a broader effort that we have underway with respect to workforce development, connecting people to jobs, helping people to be able to have the resources to become homeowners.
A lot of people don't think that they have a future having a safe place to be.
Ivy Morris is a health advocate. She works with people in West Hill and says there's a sense of hopelessness among the people there.
When I speak to people that I know, the fact that there is no hope, that the people seem to have lost hope because they don't have a voice.
Her interest in West Hill is personal. She grew up here on 1st Street in this yellow house.
And it was thriving. And maybe it's because I was a child, but it seemed safe.
But people say they don't feel safe anymore. When it comes to the problem of the vacant homes, the mayor is correct. It started long before she took office. In fact, we found this survey done nearly 20 years ago. It said if something wasn't done about vacant homes, it would create blight, it would decrease property values, and it would encourage illegal activity. Well, all 3 things have happened. In fact, just recently, a young man was gunned down right here in the West Hill neighborhood.
The mayor says crime reduction plans have worked in other parts of the city.
If you look back at what was happening over on Dana Avenue and over near Albany Medical Center, it was some of the highest crime call volumes anywhere in the city. And the community came together and they created a plan.
But not in West Hill.
The methods of community engagement that have worked in other communities didn't work there.
The disconnect between the city and the residents here is palpable, but a counselor who specializes in urban grief says, what should we expect?
It's a familiar term, post-traumatic stress disorder, but it's not post. For the folks that are living in our neighborhoods, it's continuous. It's ongoing exposure to these chronic traumatic elements.
I get it. Right? There is, we have to be the ones that go above and beyond because there have been decades of broken promises.
In the West Hill neighborhood of Albany, this is a regular occurrence. Dirk DeJong, assistant professor of social work at Siena College.
I think there are definitely negative consequences to being exposed to violence.
In fact, he says chronic crime and violence impacts a person's view of the world.
It affects how you see society, it affects your social development. Again, if violence is that, if you're exposed to that chronically, it normalizes it and it becomes part of how you think people interact.
Lisa Good agrees and says it's time to stop blaming those who endure chronic violence.
Approach it from that lens and say, you know what, it's not about what's wrong with you, what happened to you, and what can we do to support you.
Just how much crime are residents there dealing with? We investigated under the Freedom of Information Act. We tracked violent crime dating back 5 years, from murders to rapes, robberies to aggravated assaults. Crime has remained steady in West Hill from 2012 to 2017, with more than 300 acts of violent crime or very close to that each year. This year already, according to the Albany Police Department's new computer data portal, there have been 384 arrests, 3 murders, 6 assaults with a weapon in West Hill. Over those 5 years, crime was the worst in the West Hill area.
So what is the solution? Well, any plan that looks at the issue of crime in terms of law enforcement only is a big mistake, says Professor DeJong.
Crime and poverty are not accidental. Again, they are systemic issues. Crime is the symptom, not the cause.
Good says we need to focus on issues impacting urban cities.
Urban grief is really looking at the losses that are unique to urban settings, you know, particularly around violence, the high rates of health disparities, the high rates of poverty, and the trauma that's associated, you know, with that.
DeJong adds mass incarceration to that list.
When young men of color are taken from the community, it has an effect. It has an effect on families. It has an effect on how families can survive.
And these systematic problems reflect the deterioration of the neighborhood. Just 10 minutes from West Hill is Pine Hills. Not an upscale area, but if you just look around the neighborhood, you will see there's more investment, from housing to businesses, and the crime rate much lower. As of August 27th, Albany Police Department says there were 95 arrests and no murders. Albany Mayor Kathy Sheehan says she gets it and says she's taking a holistic approach to fighting crime.
Access to guns is something that we absolutely need to focus on. There are far too many illegal guns out there, but we also have to look at the supply side. Why is somebody choosing to pick up a gun? Why is somebody deciding that they need to have a gun in their life? And what are the underlying causes of that? And sometimes those are causes that are related to hopelessness because they've disconnected, they either didn't get the support that they needed to successfully graduate from high school, for example, or to access job readiness programs.
And those job programs, she says, will offer a path to good jobs.
So in each of the grants that we funded, there are actual employers at the other end of the training. So it's not just come in and get trained on how to work in a warehouse, it's come in and get trained on how to work at a warehouse, and now we're going to guarantee that these 3 employers, when you complete this training, will interview you.
Kenyatta Zachary is not an accountant by trade.
And I know exactly how each check is going to be spent.
But the Troy resident has learned to account for every penny she spends. In fact, there is no wiggle room in her monthly household budget. Food, $240, spent mainly on meats and perishables. The rest comes from food pantries. Electricity, $100 to $120. Cable, $125. Phone, $130. Childcare, $280. Then there are bus cards and rent, $501. It all adds up for the single mom of 4. With an annual salary of less than $20,000, she struggles. Managing without public assistance, she works nearly 30 hours extra.
It's just expensive. Like, I don't live beyond my means now, so I'm afraid to have the like the extra bills. So it's kind of like, right now I'm working 60 to 72 hours. I barely get any sleep.
That's 60 to 72 hours a week. So despite the president's boasting about the economy and the thousands of jobs that he's created for blacks, Kenyatta isn't making great gains.
I can pay my bills, I can pay my rent, I can make sure the kids is good, but anything outside of that, I cannot do it. I can't afford to do so.
We took a closer look at income disparities along racial lines. We found this 2018 study from the Capital District Regional Planning Commission, which looked at income disparities by race right here in the Capital Region. The numbers are staggering. On average, there is a nearly $30,000 difference in household income between whites and blacks in the Capital Region. The average white household income in 2016 was almost $67,800. For blacks, it was $37,900. Hispanic households were a little better with $46,686. But the reality in 2018 is that there are more people existing on much less than that.
We do free tax preparation here with the United Way. And the median income some years ago, I don't have last year's statistics, was far lower than that.
Harris Oberlander, who heads Albany's Trinity Alliance, says there are a lot of people just like Kenyatta.
People are short on work, they're underemployed, they're unemployed, or the other side of the ledger is that you have people who are working 2 and 3 and 4 jobs.
His agency provides programs and essential services for those families who are not part of this current economic upswing. So when the Capital District Regional Planning Commission puts out those numbers showing such a major gap, who gets their analysis?
We send this to, I have to look at my mailing list, but we're talking, 1,500 plus recipients that get this information.
People who make policy, planners, city and county leaders, mayors. So what are they doing about it? The income gap, some say, is the result of a lack of education and job training. Others say it is generational poverty.
One of the things that I see is the intergenerational cycle of poverty. That it's really, really challenging to break that cycle.
Lisa Good works with people during some of the worst times of their lives, following violence and trauma, but says poverty underlines all of those ills.
It's not enough to give them an economic step up. People have to have an economic way out.
Public policy generally funds on the back end of things. You have when people are addicted, when people have committed a crime, when there's been some sort of family issue. What I think is needed is that front-end investment that helps families live their lives.